Enos. Several months ago, a woman was driving home to her apartment from her sister's house. It was a Tuesday nearing midnight. The highway was deserted, and only the beams of her headlights pierced the darkness, reflecting off the yellow lane markings that slid beneath her wheels. Fatigue weighed on her eyelids, but she remained alert. The radio played softly in the background, just loud enough to keep her from drifting off to sleep. About 40 miles from the nearest town, she noticed a narrow side road winding through the fields. The GPS indicated that this route would shave 10 minutes off her journey, and without hesitation, she turned onto it. The road was narrow and shrouded in darkness. Dense cornfields rose on both sides, and the asphalt surface glistened, still wet from a recent rain. To avoid a potential collision with a deer, she slowed to 50 miles per hour. After about 10 minutes, her headlights illuminated a car parked on the shoulder. Its hazard. Lights blinked dimly red among the swaying stalks. A figure in a light-colored jacket stood near the open trunk, a woman waving her arms frantically. The wind whipped through her hair, obscuring her features. The driver slowed down and cautiously approached. When she was about 40 feet away, the stranger stepped directly onto the asphalt, waving even more vigorously. At that moment, the headlights better illuminated the rear of her car. Behind the bumper, almost hidden in the weeds, a man was crouched. He was clearly not working on a tire. His gaze was fixed on the road. Every muscle in the woman's body tensed. The first thought that flashed through her mind was, why hide if help is truly needed? She loosened her grip on the steering wheel, maintaining a steady speed, and shifted slightly toward the center of the lane to pass with extra space. The woman on the shoulder took a step back, still gesturing, but now her movements seemed contrived, like in a cheap play. Time twos. The driver's gaze flickered back to the man. He turned his head toward her, bracing his left hand on the trunk, his legs positioned to lunge onto the road. An icy chill ran through her chest, a pure primal instinct for survival. She moved her right foot from the brake pedal to the accelerator. The engine roared more confidently. She kept her face expressionless, staring straight ahead as if she hadn't noticed anything suspicious. As she sped past, she saw the man's shoulders tense. He was on the verge of launching himself, but something held him back. As soon as she was 15 yards away, gravel crunched under her tires, and a muffled female scream echoed from behind, the words lost in the noise. In her rearview mirror, she saw both of them dart toward their car. The hazard lights went off. Headlights blazed on, and the engine roared at full throttle. The woman floored the gas pedal. Her sedan wasn't particularly fast, but on this straight, arrow-like road, it felt like a race car. The speedometer climbed past 70, then 80 miles per hour. In the mirror, the pursuer's headlights bounced. Their car swerved onto the road with a screech of tires, gradually closing the gap. She glanced at her phone on the passenger seat. No signal bars. This remote back road was too isolated for cell service. A 911 call would have to wait. The main thing was to get back to the highway. She fought to stay calm, mentally calculating her options. Ahead, the road curved to the left and then dipped under a railroad bridge. For a split second, she killed her headlights, just long enough for the pursuers to lose sight of her momentarily in the turn. It was a risky maneuver, but she had no choice. Darkness instantly enveloped the lane, but before the concrete wall of the bridge, the lights came back on. She hoped that this brief shadow would make them hesitate in uncertainty. In the mirror, their lights wavered, then steadied, but the distance was still shrinking. Now they were about 8 car lengths behind. Her heart pounded so hard she could taste the metallic tang of adrenaline in her mouth. She scanned for any sign of civilization, a lit driveway, a farmhouse with a lantern, but saw only endless cornfields and an inky sky. Beyond the bridge, the road straightened out for a mile. The woman floored the gas again. The engine began to whine from the strain. The gap widened to 10 car lengths. Then a green sign flashed ahead. Exit to I-87 in 2 miles. A wave of relief washed over her. If she could make it to the highway, the traffic and bright lights might scare off her pursuers. But her gaze also caught something else. A narrow dirt path on the right, a track for tractors where the corn almost completely concealed the turn. She blinked, realizing that the opening was only visible at the last moment. A sharp braking maneuver could bury her in the stalks, hiding her brake lights from view. In the mirror, the pursuers were driving directly in the center, confident in their straightforward hunt. She gently touched the brake to make the lights flicker, but without slowing down noticeably, trying to mislead them, let them think she was panicking. Then, 10 yards before the dirt path, she made her move, a full brake application and a hard turn to the right. The tires howled in protest. The hood bounced on the rough shoulder. Corn leaves lashed the windshield like whips. She killed the headlights instantly and shut off the engine. The car crept to a stop between the rows, cooling down with a soft, ticking sound. The thick smell of diesel fuel from the fields flooded the cabin. The woman froze, holding her breath. Her hands trembled so much that her keys jingled. The night outside turned into solid darkness. Only the engine ticked and her pulse throbbed in her temples. Finally, she risked a look in the rear-view mirror. The road was empty. No headlights. No reflections. Time twos. They must have missed the turn. She sank deeper into her seat. After a minute, an engine roared in the distance, fading into the night. For 5 agonizing minutes, she sat motionless, mentally counting the seconds. Then she started the car again, but kept the headlights off. Slowly, creeping through the stalks, she made her way to a parallel service road leading to the distant lights of the highway. Her speed barely exceeded a walking pace until she saw the fence. There she found a gate and steered onto the asphalt of the service road. Signal bars flickered on her phone display. In a voice that still trembled, she dialed 911 and told the dispatcher everything, the make, model, and coordinates. The officer stayed on the line until 2 sheriff's patrol cars pulled up to the gas station by the highway. They took her statement while she drank water and tried to stop shivering. One of the officers mentioned that similar incidents had been reported on rural roads that month. A classic setup, a fake breakdown, a hidden accomplice, and a sudden ambush. The criminals targeted deserted roads, nighttime, and lone drivers. Most often, the victims were robbed of their wallets and devices. Some were beaten. That pair perfectly matched the description from another case 2 nights earlier. The woman could have been their next victim. She finally returned to her apartment around 3 in the morning, still in a state of heightened alert. After checking every lock twice, she sank onto the couch and listened to the oppressive silence. The next day, she received a call from the detectives. The same car had been caught on toll road cameras, heading south just an hour after her call, but the license plates were stolen. The search continued. Since then, she avoids secondary roads after dark, no matter how much time it might save. If she sees a driver in distress, she calls for help, but she never stops herself. She still replays the moment when the woman stepped back and the man's gaze met hers. She wonders what might have happened if she had stopped, left the engine running, and offered help. The question haunts her every time she drives down a highway at night, and it's what keeps her alert when the road ahead is empty and the only source of light is her own headlights. She had been driving for almost 3 hours, returning to her apartment after a weekend visit to her sister's house. The highway was deserted, the moon was hidden, and only a few faint orange lights flickered every few miles, like lonely beacons in the darkness. Her old sedan hummed steadily at the speed limit, and the muffled drone of a late-night talk show on the radio helped keep her awake. Around 12:20 a.m., bright headlights suddenly illuminated her rearview mirror. They approached rapidly from behind, then closed in, matching her speed. She glanced at the speedometer, all within the limit. So she stayed in her lane and waited for the car to pass. But instead, red and blue lights flashed behind the grille. A wave of astonishment washed over her. A traffic stop in the middle of nowhere. Signaling, she slowed down and pulled over onto the wide shoulder. Gravel crunched under the tires as the car came to a stop. She shifted the transmission into park, took a deep breath, and turned off the radio. The car behind her, if it was indeed a patrol car, stopped as well. Its headlights remained on, blinding her in the mirrors and preventing her from seeing any details. She slightly lowered her window and waited. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, approached slowly, and stopped just behind the driver's door. She noticed the uneven rhythm of his footsteps on the gravel, a heavy thud, followed by a light scuff, as if he was dragging an injured leg. "License and registration," the man said in a low, almost indifferent tone. She tilted her head to try to see him through the narrow gap in the glass. He wore a dark jacket that could pass for a uniform at a stretch, but without any patches, name tag, or police badge. A flashlight and something like pepper spray hung on his belt, but no gun, radio, or handcuffs. Something was definitely wrong. Keeping her hands on the steering wheel, she tried to speak calmly. "Officer, could you tell me why you pulled me over?" He hesitated for a moment. "Routine check," he replied. "Nothing serious if everything's in order." She remembered that real police officers usually state the reason immediately. Her heart beat faster. Nevertheless, she slowly reached for her purse, making sure her movements were visible, and handed her license through the partially open window. When he asked for the registration, she pretended to rummage through the glove compartment, buying time to try to spot the emblem of a real patrol car on his door. Instead, she saw only a plain dark blue sedan with a magnetic flashing light on the roof. Took her license, held it up to the light of the dashboard, and stared at it suspiciously for a long time, squinting. Then he asked an unusual question. "Where exactly are you headed tonight?" She named her city, which was 2 hours east. He nodded, as if noting the information in an invisible notebook. The next question increased her anxiety. "Does anyone else know where you are right now?" She tried to remain calm. "Yes, my sister knows my route." To reinforce the effect, she added, "She's tracking me on an app." It was a lie, but she hoped the mention of tracking would make him think twice. The man made an indefinite sound. Then he leaned lower, trying to look into the back seat. "Open the trunk," he commanded. The request made no sense. There was no probable cause, and she wasn't even speeding. "Is something wrong with my taillights, sir?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, his fingers began to tap methodically on the roof of the car, as if in thought. She knew it was time to get out of there, but speeding off with him at the door seemed too dangerous, so she continued to stall. "I can't find the trunk release," she said, reaching toward the center console. He stepped back slightly, shining his flashlight on the passenger seat. This gave her a brief opportunity. She abruptly rolled up the window and shifted into drive. He slapped his hand on the glass, but she floored the gas pedal. Gravel sprayed as she pulled back onto the highway. Her pulse pounded in her ears. The steering wheel vibrated in her frantic grip. In the mirror, she saw the headlights of the fake patrol car swerve, then straighten out behind her. He was chasing her, but the flashing lights weren't on. The gap between them was closing. She accelerated to 80, then 90 miles per hour. She remembered that the nearest exit led to a 24-hour gas station, with surveillance cameras and possibly an attendant on duty. Her phone was lying on the passenger seat. Gripping the steering wheel with one hand, she grabbed it and dialed 911. The operator answered, and she hurriedly reported her location, speed, and the pursuer impersonating an officer. The dispatcher told her to head to a well-lit area, stay on the line, and not to stop until real police arrived. Suddenly, the sedan behind her slowed down. Its headlights fell back, blinked, and disappeared as the car turned onto a side road. She didn't allow herself to relax until she saw the glow of the gas station ahead. Pulling into the parking lot, she parked near the glass doors of the entrance and waited in the locked car. A few minutes later, 2 marked sheriff's cars arrived with their sirens off, but lights flashing. The real deputies took her statement. They examined the tire tracks and the location of the stop on the shoulder. They said that there had been 3 similar incidents in that section of the highway in the past month. Always late at night, always with lone drivers. The imposter hadn't harmed anyone, but each victim mentioned the same suspicious questions and the jacket without any identifying marks. She sat on the curb, still shaking, while one of the deputies drove the route looking for the fake patrol car. He returned an hour later empty-handed. Before leaving, they gave her a case number and said that state troopers would be increasing patrols. They expressed their gratitude that she had called instead of allowing him to search the car. She finally set off again around 2:30 a.m. The rest of the drive stretched out in her mind 5 times longer than usual. Every time headlights flashed behind her, her stomach clenched. But she arrived home just before dawn, at dawn. 2 days later, a detective contacted her by phone. Police had found the abandoned sedan in a field near the same highway. Inside, they found a magnetic, flashing light, a dark jacket, and a tablet with times and locations marked on it. It was likely a schedule of planned stops. None of the fingerprints matched any data in their database, and the suspect was still at large. He might never be caught. For weeks, she replayed the scene in her mind, turning it over and over. If she had opened the door or the trunk, or simply gotten out of the car, the consequences could have been unpredictable and tragic. She replaced the old dashboard camera with a new model and installed an additional one in the back. Now, When flashing lights appear in her rearview mirror, she always chooses a position under a bright streetlight, within camera range or near pedestrians, before even considering stopping. She tells the story to friends when they talk about long road trips. Most react with a nervous laugh, assuring her that something like that would never happen to them. She sincerely hopes they're right. However, in those moments when the highway empties and the night envelops everything in silence, it's not difficult for a predator to hide behind a mask of authority. It's a lesson she learned at the cost of deep distress and engraved forever in her memory. It was around 11:30 p.m., and she was heading home after a grueling shift at the diner. Her old Honda Civic was belching exhaust, so she pulled into a small gas station off Route 17. It was one of those dilapidated places with flickering fluorescent lights and a single pump that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. The air was crisp, and the only sounds were the faint hum of the lights and the occasional car whooshing past on the highway. She felt drained. Her feet ached after a day on her feet, and all she wanted was to fill up the tank and get to her cozy apartment. She swiped her card at the pump terminal, and the machine beeped in confirmation. The fuel nozzle clicked, locking in place, and the sharp scent of gasoline filled the air as she filled the tank. Leaning against the car, she buried herself in her phone to pass the time. The gas station was deserted, except for a beat-up pickup truck near the convenience store, but there was no one inside. The clerk was probably dozing behind the counter. She didn't think much of it. These rural spots usually quieted down after dark. The pump beeped, and she carefully hung the nozzle back in place. Giving the area one last look, she headed for the driver's door. It creaked open, and she slid into the seat, tossing her phone onto the passenger side. She turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed, but finally started. Something in the air felt unsettling, but she chalked it up to the gas station's gloomy atmosphere or simple fatigue. Dismissing her doubts, she pulled onto the highway, and the lights of the station faded in the rear view mirror. The road stretched into darkness, with only a few lights casting weak reflections on the asphalt. To stay awake, she turned on the radio, a late-night talk show about alien conspiracy theories, droned in the background. She had driven about 10 miles when she heard it. A soft sound like a faint sigh. She froze, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel. She turned off the radio, listening to the night. Nothing but silence. She tried to convince herself it was her imagination, a quirk of the engine or a gust of wind. But then it happened again, clearer this time, a slow, deliberate inhale from somewhere deep inside the car. Her pulse quickened. She glanced in the rearview mirror, but the darkness completely obscured the back seat. Ahead, the highway stretched into the void, without a single oncoming car. She fought to stay calm, assuming it was a hallucination from exhaustion, an echo of her own breathing in her head. But the sound returned, low, raspy, as if someone was intentionally holding their breath. It was coming from right behind her. She slammed on the brakes, the tires screeched, and the car lurched to a stop in the middle of the road. Her hands were shaking as she yanked the door handle, falling out of the car. Her thoughts shut down. Instinct took over, and she scrambled to the shoulder, her sneakers crunching on the gravel. Turning around, she stared at her car, breathing in short gasps, as if she had just sprinted. The driver's door was wide open, the interior light weakly illuminating the empty seats. No one was visible, but she didn't dare approach. Then there was a rustling sound, movement inside. The rear passenger door flew open, and a figure bolted out. A tall, thin man in a dark, hooded sweatshirt. He didn't turn around, just sprinted across the road towards the dense woods on the shoulder. The trees swallowed him instantly, and the sound of snapping branches gradually faded into the night silence. She stood frozen in place, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. Her phone was in the car, on the passenger seat. She didn't want to go back, but standing there until morning was unthinkable. The highway remained deserted for miles around, with no sign of other cars. Taking a hesitant step, then another, she approached, not taking her eyes off the car. The back seat seemed empty, but she didn't trust appearances. Grabbing a stick from the side of the road, an improvised weapon, albeit flimsy, she crept closer, clutching it like a baseball bat. The interior light was on, illuminating her purse on the floor and her phone on the seat. Leaning in, tense to the limit, she peered into the back, empty, just her gym bag and an old blanket. Snatching her phone, she recoiled, dialing 911 with fingers that were still trembling. The operator answered in a calm, businesslike tone. She tried to explain, her words jumbled in a rush. "Someone was hiding in my car," she stammered in a shaking voice. "He was hiding in the back seat and ran into the woods." The woman asked for her location, and she gave her the mile marker she had recently passed. The operator told her not to leave the area. A patrol car was on its way. She stood by the side of the road, clutching her phone, glancing back at the car and the woods. Every rustle of leaves sent shivers down her spine, and questions swirled in her head. What could have happened? How long had he been in there? Had he been waiting at the gas station for a victim like her? The thought made her stomach clench. She pictured him sneaking into the car while she was distracted by the gas pump, hiding in the shadows of the back seats. Time stretched on, but the police arrived in about 20 minutes. 2 officers, a man and a woman, got out of the patrol car and approached. She told them everything: the gas station, the suspicious breathing, the fugitive in the woods. They thoroughly searched the car, probing every corner with flashlights. The female officer looked in the back seat and pulled out a find that made her blood run cold: a small pocket knife hidden under the blanket. It didn't belong to her. "We'll take it for analysis," she said, bagging the evidence. They asked if she had seen the man's face, but no. The darkness and the speed of events prevented it. The male officer headed towards the woods with a flashlight, but didn't go far. "You won't find him at night," he said. "Too thick, and he's got a head start on us." They offered to escort her home, and she agreed, not wanting to risk driving alone after such a shock. All the way, she kept glancing in the mirrors, with a sense of dread that someone might be lurking in the back seat, like a ghost from a nightmare. When she finally reached her apartment, she carefully locked the door and propped a chair under the handle for good measure, creating an extra barrier against an unseen threat. She spent the night sleepless in anxious vigilance. Every creak of the floorboards in the old building, every shifting shadow from the streetlight made her body jolt, as if electrocuted. The next day she called the police station, hoping for news. The criminal had not been identified, but investigators had reviewed the security camera footage from the gas station. The clerk remembered a suspicious guy in a sweatshirt hanging around the parking lot that night, but the cameras didn't capture his face, only a blurry silhouette in the dim light. Experts concluded that he likely broke into her car while she was filling up, taking advantage of the unlocked rear door that she had neglected to close. The thought made her nauseous. The realization of her own carelessness, her complete absorption in her smartphone screen, hit her like a slap in the face, making her realize how fragile her safety had been at that moment. Since then, she avoids driving at night, as if she were avoiding the shadow of her own mistake. She bought a new car equipped with a reliable alarm system, and now, when she gets behind the wheel, she always checks the back seat, examining every corner for hidden danger. At times, in the silence, she is still haunted by the echo of that breathing, the slow, raspy rhythm echoing in her memory like distant thunder. She never found out what intentions lay behind that intrusion, and, admittedly, she doesn't crave that truth. One thing is certain that night. Fortune smiled on her. If she hadn't heard that sound, hadn't slammed on the brakes, she might not be here to tell this story as a warning.